South Africa is in its 30 years of democracy and held its 7th democratic national elections in 2024. These elections, considered a landmark one for various reasons, warranted a space for reflection and robust debate and dialogue. The Wit School of Governance election series created this platform to provide varying lenses and to hear from leaders in their own voices.
I have participated in all the democratic elections, and I'm about to participate in the forthcoming elections. As a scholar, I've tried to investigate what is the uniqueness of these elections. Some even refer to these elections as 1994. They are 1994 elections.
How is the government addressing the socio-economic factors contributing to crime, while also enhancing the efficiency of prosecuting criminals?
In some municipalities where you are in coalition with, you are accused of bullying by your coalition partners.
So ask on the issue of Afrophobia.
This is a series of political party leaders speaking to us in the room and those of us who are joining online. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let the fun begin.
This is the Wit School of Governance, so expect a little bit of spice from the audience.
And as a school of governance in particular, we'll also be asking policy questions.
You're asking very complex questions, Prof. And I want to thank my alma mater, by the way, for doing this, because Wit is my alma mater, and it's time we have content politics, not sloganeering and screaming and shouting, and people have no clue what they're talking about.
We are now 30 years into our democratization in South Africa, and in which South Africa has attempted to build a better Africa and global world out there. Many are noting that this elections will be a game changer, certainly because the majority of the polls show a continued decline of support for the ANC and the likelihood that we will have to enter the terrain of coalition politics. This will therefore be a hotly contested election.
The past 30 years have been an incredible journey that South Africa has gone through, a transformative journey, a journey of enormous change. And in fact, some people would characterize it as a period where a country which went through one of the most horrible periods of racism and oppression and exploitation, and they have characterized it as almost a miracle that people for the longest time never thought would happen. It was a journey that took 342 years since the arrival of Europeans in our country, who on arrival started or unleashed a great deal of violence, a process of dispossession, a process of slavery, a process of greed and grabbing what did not belong to them, appropriating the property of the indigenous people of this country. And following their arrival, the various peoples of our country resisted. And that resistance took a journey, a process of 342 years. And in 1912, they formed their own organization that led the struggle, joined up by a number of other organizations, until 82 years later, that struggle was won. And we brought an end to the nightmare of apartheid.
South Africans have matured democracy in an amazing manner. Our democracy is only 30 years old. The Greeks have had democracy for over 1,000 years, but we compare with them very well. We beat above our weight. We really, box very, very well, on the world stage.
We just have taken our baby steps. We're 30 years old, and when we compare ourselves with countries that have had 250 years, 500 years of democracy, we find that we are real babies.
Well, democracy is about discussion, debate, consultation before arriving at conclusions. And I think what we've tried to do with this exercise has been to demonstrate the important role of conversation in the making and consolidation of democracies.
Key issues emerged in the series: questions around professionalization of the public sector. Is there a need for provincial government? Does South Africa view African countries as strategic partners? Gender representation in manifestos, policy issues, crime, and coalition governments were all brought to the fore.
And it looks like your party is pulling out all of the veterans. One could almost begin to feel that the ANC is like a wounded lion now, ready to fight back with all of what it has to ensure that it gets that 50+1, if not more.
The ANC is not just an insignificant small organization, it's a big elephant. And you have to eat it piece by piece until you collapse it. And we have successfully done that.
We are not a wounded lion, far from it. What we have, it's the most unbelievable endowment. As the African National Congress, we have the unbelievable and single endowment that no other party has.
Is the transformation policy by the DA that you have in place within the DA leadership structures?
I think we went through a period of leadership in our party where we had somewhat of an identity crisis. There was one position that was taken on one day, another position taken on another day. Look at the Black Economic Empowerment debate on its own. And I think that there was a lack of principle and values in the way in which leadership was executed in our party at that time. We had a lot of infighting. You would see a number of leaks that would take place in the Sunday papers, and it was really not good for internal cohesion and harmony within the party. And ultimately, what voters found was that when you spend too much time navel-gazing, instead of focusing on the issues that matter to voters, you're going to get punished at the polls, and rightfully so, we got punished at the polls.
My name is Floyd.
Yeah.
I hear that you say if ANC is losing, you will take your vote and give it to ANC, and you will put Floyd as a Minister of Finance. Is it true or false? Thank you. My name is Floyd. Yeah, my advice to you, Professor, concerning the problem of the country and the ANC. We got too much unemployment, especially youth. So my advice to you, President, I was asking you just to release people who are 55 years and 65, actually to go to pension, but you pay them 65 years in order to what? To give young generation a job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fred, who seems to be very popular here. He seems to be well known, and he's here wearing a T-shirt with a color that I like. He's coming up with a very good, straightforward proposition, and we've been working on it in government.
When the Springboks play and win, our happiness index shoots up as a country. Our togetherness index shoots up as a country. And then they stop playing, and then we remember that, oh, okay, no, you black and you blue and you purple, you leave me alone. But when the Springboks are playing, nobody remembers that you are blue or purple, right? So for me, we need something that I want to come back to, because I used to be in the music industry, I used to run the music industry. We need like a Mendoza effect.
My question for our president is, given the consistent unemployment rate in South Africa and the emergence or the continuous emergence of AI, what structures are in place to ensure sustainable employment?
SADC has as one of its key strategies to promote the development, transfer, and mastery of technology as one of the ways we're going to move forward economically and also socially. So again, we look back to the manifestos to see whether South Africa, at least from a party politics perspective and what people are speaking on, offer any promise. So the Policy Innovation Lab at the University of Stellenbosch just completed a small study where they used sort of AI, I think it was mainly a fancy AI project, but what they did was quite interesting, which was to scour the manifestos of all of the parties, or at least a number of the major ones, and to really look at how they dealt with digital transformation and what they are saying they're going to achieve. Should they be successful? And the results were underwhelming. Most of the parties made little mention of anything to do with digital transformation, and to the extent they did, it was fairly instrumental, not really about mobilizing technology in any way that would perhaps lead to development or democratization or anything like that. Now, what's significant about that for me is our own work at the Civic Tech Innovation Network, looking at what civic tech is doing in the region in Southern Africa, is also demonstrating a huge growth, by the way, of more and more civic people using digital technologies to get involved, to participate, to get involved in their own development. But over 60% of them focused on essentially actions of watchdogging, what I called in one article, watchering. So we go to vote, and then we spend our talent, our time, our energy monitoring corruption, monitoring elections, insisting on accountability, insisting on transparency, rather than doing perhaps what we need to do, which is focus on development and livelihoods, because that's not getting much better on the continent. So there the question becomes, are we reaping any dividend actually from this peace we've had? And are we really mobilizing the best of our technological skills, capabilities in the region for the development that people sorely need? And I don't see any promise of that in the manifestos.
If you look at AI and the digital economy from the prism of one side only, you will see it as a job destroyer, but they are not. They are enablers because they enable more people to create businesses. And by so doing, even in small and medium enterprises, they create more opportunities.
The discussion around professionalization of the public service. Now, we know that this is a narrative that already started during the ANC government, whereby this whole notion of professionalization is going to take place. But thus far, there has not been a skills audit conducted in the public service. The areas of where we are lacking professionally have not clearly been identified. My question is are we going around a narrative, or do we really feel that public servants are not professional enough?
On the 1st of June after the election, nothing will change unless we actually address the structure of government that has been underperforming and disappointing South Africans for the last 30 years. One of our key offerings to South Africans is to reform and restructure the public service, and that includes professionalizing the public service.
In the public sector that are very professionalized. In fact, that is the problem. I think that is the elephant in the room, is that they're so professionalized that they don't know how to deal with their corrupt masters.
The School of Governance needs to help the three spheres of government to say, what is that or the level of graduates that you are producing here that are going to take over to be mayors and municipal managers, and because we cannot rely on people who are cadre deployees, whereas we can rely from the School of Governance producing the type of people who understand that tomorrow I can be a mayor. But the problem is that we produce people here who are so academic, who think that politics is not for me. I want to be an administrator. But immediately we produce people who don't want to play in the space of politics. We will always say there's no capacity at the level of governance. So professionalization, it's there. But you need to professionalize governance, because to implement a policy that has been done by people who are bruised, we came through the trenches, we fought, we need to eat now. No, they will develop a policy in such a way that you as a professional person, you'll find it difficult to implement.
Pose a question around something which I found curious in your manifesto, which is the future of provincial governments.
Yes.
And your emphasis on revamping the local government system. What's the logic behind that?
The ANC's original policy never had provinces in it. We've always strived for the establishment of a unitary state and do away with the homelands. When they were negotiating in CODESA and the IFP was refusing to participate, with clear demand that KwaZulu-Natal must be demarcated as a province, the provinces came as a compromise. So now they want to operate as if provinces have always been their strategic objective. They forget it was a tactic to get the IFP into elections, then have a peaceful South Africa, show black and white how we're going to govern and all of that. Once they come down, we go back to our original position. I want you, School of Governance, to tell me, because I'm still struggling with that. What is the role of the Premier? What does he do? What is the role of the MEC of Education? Because the syllabus is national. The question paper is national. The subject itself is national. There is no Tsonga of Gauteng and Tsonga of Guyana. There is one paper of Tsonga, and that is written central. So what is this person doing? He's an inspector. If he's inspecting schools on behalf of national government, let it be clear. Premier is the most useless position compared to a councillor. A councillor can unblock a blocked sewer. A premier can't do that. When your sewer is blocked, call a premier. You're going to hear English. in terms of systems and spheres of governance and hierarchy, we are not allowed, but as it were, I will call the mayor so that we find a way and address this thing holistically. That's it. The toilet remains blocked. You call a councillor, which street are you? Okay, come, I'm coming. He goes stand next to the sewer, call the municipal workers, come in and block the sewer. None of those people in the province can do that. So the ANC then gets provinces. Then it realizes, no man, we can dispense a lot of patronage. We thought we were only going to be at this. So we can also put our people here and have as many cadres as possible eating. And it worked for them. That's why they don't want to move away from it. We remove the premier, we remove the MEC, we remove the legislature. What is the role of the legislature? Because the law is one. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa is the law. Every other thing must be in compliance with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which can be done centrally in Parliament of the Republic of South Africa. In Limpopo, when they go to legislature, they announce it everywhere. Facebook, members of legislature. It's like a 21st birthday party. Why? They never go to legislature. They go once in a while, but salary doesn't come once in a while. Benefits don't come once in a while. All of them have got parliamentary villages and all of that. Why? For what? So we can save a lot of money by removing the provincial government and have a super metro called Gauteng with a mayor, and it doesn't matter thousands councillors, as long as they've got a specific constituency that they are responsible for and they are going to service. That's all we need.
To have an efficient government, you must devolve power from being central to the national government, to provincial, and also to local government spheres. By the way, the concept of the 3 spheres of government in South Africa is a brainchild of the IFP at CODESA. I agree. We do need a second CODESA to evaluate that how far have we gone and where did we miss things from what we agreed upon in 1994 when we formed the first democratic government in our country.
Gender is important in everything. We need to talk about it because it matters everywhere. So I'm asking them to reflect on what transformation means for them.
We are one of the very few sub-regions that came up with a very clear protocol on gender and women's representation. The aspiration being to make sure that we've got at least 50% representation. And for the past electoral cycle in South Africa, it was a bright star. I think 41 or 42%. That's what was achieved. But I think the discussion, like you said, is an important conversation. I think if we really were to measure based on those metrics, we may tick the boxes that we're doing well. But I think there are important conversations or questions that we have to ask. So what if we've achieved this kind of representation?
Representation. It is seen as a theater for projecting women, but never for really asking the questions around the logics, the grammar, the philosophies, and the commitment they have to the political system as a system of distribution of resources, of power, of decision-making systems, but also of creating policies and laws or legislation that undergets the quality of the democratic dividend.
There's always a question whenever women leadership arise in the society. This is not a South African issue. This is a societal issue across the globe. And this is despite the many lived experiences and occurrences where women have not stood up just to prove themselves that they are leaders, but they have stood for a cause that is genuine and a cause that would not be about themselves. In the context of South Africa, you would know that historically we do have the 1956 a momentous occasion, which did not just shape the discourse in as far as the leadership of women of the era, but it went on to become a reference in history that many women that were to come and exist in this country, myself involved, would look at and be inspired, knowing that the ground has already been prepared for all of us as women.
I think it's important to highlight that women and men are different, socially, biologically, and otherwise. So their needs are also different. The experiences are also different. So it's important that these needs and experiences and interests of women are represented in decision making. And it's also important to note that it is women who are best placed to advocate for themselves. They're best placed to articulate their needs and their interests. It's women who are best placed to also indicate what it is that they need or require from those that make decisions.
SADC is both a geographic space, very specific countries that are members of a particular union. But SADC is also a historical space. It's got the largest concentration of liberation movements, and also the region where per capita you had, if you just take countries right next to each other, fought within the same time, the highest number of liberation fights or liberation wars fought.
Regrettably, with a ring of irony, we're meeting to discuss SADC against a backdrop of failed elections in Zimbabwe, which SADC condemned as flawed. And I just wonder what is the relevance of SADC in such discussions, where both national institutions and regional institutions are in a flux of despair.
This Africa, we keep talking about where are the institutions that are supposed to. Now we bring it back to who pays for them. African Development Bank is the premier policy organ of the continent, policy financial institution of the continent. By shareholding, it is not African. The decision-making, the board of the ADB blocks anything that is Pan-African.
We can afford, but we choose not to afford. And that's because we are, I don't want to say we are because I'm not, but that generation of people seem to be deeply, for whatever reason, entrenched in the cycle of being dependent or seem to be dependent on. And this is a problem I think Prof. Olukoshi and his cohort need to address because they are the forefront of ensuring that this dynamic changes. But it's the same way we talk about aid and how it functions or what the detriments are to us, to our development, and the fact that we always choose the easy way out of going to beg for funding.
South Africa will be turning 30 years as a democracy, and that is a period to celebrate, to be able to determine as to whether the country will sustain its record as a multi-party democracy, and in fact to try to work towards its consolidation in terms of the quality of its governance. So that's the reason why I think these elections are so critical, because they will also send what one would call as a demonstration effect to other SADC member countries that are having a bucket of trouble, if I were to use that word, for challenges in terms of the quality of democracy.
Ralph Maketa, in an article, said that foreign policy is really a major issue in election campaigns in these countries, and he was referring actually to the liberation movement SADC countries, and he says, and that's because international relations are seen as the exclusive preserve of political elites. Another futurist said political parties don't have a sense of what Africa means to them, and therefore it doesn't matter for South African parties. Now, I went through the manifestos to see whether I could find any different evidence of this. And to be honest, there's fairly limited African reflection. I mean, obviously, there are some parties who call themselves certain things that would lead to them making specific statements about Pan-Africanism. But by and large, I think there's some indications maybe around free trade. Again, not across all of them. And I really did check through at least most of the big ones. And many of the others, the references really only had to do with managing immigration issues. And so I think from the perspective of regional leadership, regional integration, I'm not sure that we can count on this election and any of the parties to really do too much for us.
The question of whether, after all these elections, I mean, do we come to the end of 2024 seeing stronger democracy on the continent? For me, that's a big question. And that brings me to the interest, the continental interest in South Africa's democratic trajectory. I mean, I think South Africa has really, brought up a lot of lessons for the continent. The fact that, one, democracy is not a straight line journey. South Africa has also shown the rest of Africa that you can pause and review at any point in your democratic journey. I've sat in meetings where people will say, who gives anyone the right to question aspects of the Constitution? This has been done continuously in South Africa. 25 years after its transition to democracy, that case went to court, and the Crown Court was able to say you should have a more inclusive interpretation of the PR system, which is quite, symbolic. The whole of Africa is actually, looking forward to these elections.
I can tell you that just given what's happening with the role South Africa is playing around the Israel-Gaza conflict, Muslim countries and Arab countries are literally lobbying for the ANC to return, literally. Important constituencies like the Association of Muslim Scholars have come out openly saying we would like for the ANC to be returned, and even suggested that without interfering, that Minister Naledi Pandor should stay.
So I think that we need to pivot away from this idea that it's only we who are going to be influenced by the rest of the world. In fact, we are influencing the world. And I think that there's this also, that I'd also like us to levitate around the idea of collected woundedness. So when we, for example, as you say, Chris, when we hear countries that seem disparate, far away from us. So countries of the Arab states, many Middle Eastern countries who are vested in the domestic elections of South Africa, millions or thousands of miles away, because they understand that there's a political resonance and a political convenience with having an ANC-led government.
We were following in the good lessons of Nelson Mandela to us, that our own freedom will never be complete until the freedom of the Palestinians is achieved. And that is what prompted us to act as we did, and continues to inspire us to be on the side not only of the Palestinians, but of justice around the world.
We reflected on the significance of the 30 years of democracy and our first democratic elections. And with nostalgia also comes the lived experience of South Africans.
They say we are in a freedom. I can't say I am in a freedom, because when I vote on 1994 until now, it's still the same. Alexander is still the same. Nothing changed in Alexander. And I like ANC, but it disappoints us. Really disappoint us. See, I've been vote, maybe I think we'll get a better life, but really it's not better. It's still the same, even if, yes, there's not apartheid, but life I'm not in the freedom. I'm living in Alexandra. We're still in the shelter from 1994 until now. West part, load shedding, water.
It was actually very exciting because it was our first democratic elections. And I went and fetched my sister. We went together, the environment was actually very exciting and so on. And I even put on my t-shirt for the party that I actually voted for. And when we got to the station, there was a long queue. And we had to be patient, to vote and so on. But everybody was now looking at me now with this attire that, but it actually went very smooth. There was no hassles, nothing, and I went and I cast my vote, and that's it.